From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone, and happy holidays to all of you. I'm Jaime Hixson.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rosen, and like Jaime, happy holidays to all of you as well.
We're very happy that you could join us tonight, and we wanted to let you know that we are taking phone calls at 718-727-0143, and you can see past shows of ours on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And in the event that you have a story that you want to have told, you can also contact me through those outlets as well as Instagram and Snapchat. Unfortunately, we have to start the show off on a rather somber note because a longtime member of the CTV family has gone on to be with the Lord, and that's James Lucy. James Lucy, or who we affectionately called here either Lord James or Jim, was a longtime producer here at CTV who did the show Lord James, in which he was a magician, and he also did another show which dealt with veterans issues. But what some people may not have known about Jim Lucy was the fact that he himself was a World War II veteran. In fact, he served during World War II and was involved in the infamous Anzio-Roma conflict, in which the United States helped to liberate Rome from the Nazis in late or actually early 1945. And it was because of his efforts that he wound up winning the Purple Heart and also received a Bronze Star. And although he was born in Brooklyn, he lived here on Staten Island for roughly 53 years. And he was actually married twice and had 3 children, 5 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. And everyone here who knew him as a rather gruff yet kind-hearted man who did all that he could to champion for veterans' causes. In fact, he was one of the men who basically made it possible for the Anzio Memorial to be built many years ago in it was over in an area of Staten Island. Unfortunately, the name of it escapes me. But in addition to that, well, it was in Snug Harbor. The Anzio Monument wound up taking place in Snug Harbor. And as it turns out, it was there that he wound up meeting his second wife, Christine. So Jim Lucy, who, by the way, was a very, very opinionated man, is going to be so missed. Just to give you an idea, Rolling Thunder, who have been really, really good friends of ours for quite a few years, and also have done so many great, great things for veterans' causes, did a 1-minute salute and ceremony at his funeral, well, at his wake, I should say, just over a week ago. And he drew at least 100 to 200 people at his wake. So once again, Jim Lucy passes away at age 92. He leaves behind his second wife, Christine, 3 kids, 5 grandkids, and 4 great-grandkids. So I say to him, I always called him Mr. Lucy. He hated being called Mr. Lucy. He always wanted me to call him Jim, but I called him Mr. Lucy because, quite frankly, he deserved that respect. After what he did for our country, he deserved that much. And everybody knew him as not just a war veteran, but he was also a really, really talented magician. In fact, he was a member of the He was a member of a very famous magicians league. I'm trying to find the name of it here in his obituary. But in the meantime, because of his veterans causes, he was also with the American Legion, who've also been great friends of ours. The American Legion, Military Order of the Purple Heart, Veterans for Foreign Wars, Disabled American Veterans, Catholic War Veterans, and USIVO. So you can tell this guy was really serious about all of his matters involving veterans. And because of his talents as a magician, he was a member of the International Brotherhood of Magicians, and he wound up winning a whole bunch of awards for his talents as a magician. So I say to Mr. Luzzi, you were kind and brave enough to defend our country and also salute the flag whenever you had the chance. So now, I, sir, am going to salute you, my dear friend and an American hero and an all-around great guy. And he is going to be so missed. Just to show you that there's no such thing as a grown man being afraid to shed tears. A good producer friend of mine, who he knew for a long time, could not hold back the tears when he prayed for him, both upon the arrival of the wake and the departure of the wake. So that's how many lives he touched then and there. Do you know what the sad part about this whole thing is? Aside from the fact that Mr. Luzzi's no longer here, is that we have to move on from this. And that's a sad and cold reality of this. He's gone, but I'll tell you right now, he is not going to be forgotten. And just to give you an idea how much time has gone on, I've had 11 and a half years here at CTV, and we've lost some really, really good people. And there's been a running joke going around that maybe some of the weird things that have been happening over here have been maybe because of the ghosts of CTV producers past. So, in case you see something a little strange that goes on around here, that's why.
Thanks for putting that thought in my head.
Well, let me tell you, it's not to scare anybody, but it's to let people know they were important parts of the family too. So, with that said, I think it's time that we start discussing some business, shall we?
Definitely. What we
There is a bright side to this whole thing. It's the fact that we get to talk a little football.
And how about the streak that finally ended on Saturday?
14 games. That's the number to reiterate. 14. That was how many games Navy wound up beating Army in the famous Army-Navy rivalry. College football is known for really, really great rivalries. The most, probably the most popular is Ohio State versus Michigan. But my personal favorite is definitely Army-Navy. Because when it comes to these recruits, there's no mention of NFL careers, no mention of draft prospects, no mention of going to a scouting combine. These guys only care about one thing. Army cares about beating Navy and vice versa. Did you see the way those cadets were just jumping around like little kids on Christmas Day when they finally beat that streak?
Oh, I saw at the fact that they won 21-17, the fact that they were facing a beat-up Navy team that lost both its starting quarterback and their defender in the previous week's game, and in the American Athletic title game against Temple, where they got their teeth knocked in 24-3.
Something tells me that maybe might have been looking ahead a little bit to that Army game, because that was 1 week before the Army game.
And then on top of all that, you had a starting quarterback who's making his first career start on top of all that, and Army, coming out to a huge 14-point lead in this game. What was crazy, the Black Knights, they had a 14-point lead that they almost blew, but it was a guy named Ahmad Bradshaw, their quarterback, with a 9-yard run with about 6:42 left, that gave them the victory, the 21-17 victory that ended 14 years of futility, which was the longest losing streak in this entire rivalry. This was the 117th meeting of these two storied service academies. Of course, West Point in our neck of the woods in upstate New York, Navy in Annapolis.
Yep.
This, and it's been in Baltimore all these years, and for the first time ever, Army won in Baltimore too as well.
We should also be remiss if we did not mention this game for many years took place at the Old Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia, and after it was built at the Link. And from time to time it was also played at the Old Giant Stadium. But for many years, this game only took place in Philly. This year, it was at M&T Bank Stadium, which is not too far from Annapolis. I would say it's about half hour to 45 minutes east of Baltimore.
This was definitely a home field advantage for the Navy for sure. This was a Navy senior class that accounted for 37 victories. That's really the most of any class during a 4-year period ever. Unfortunately, like I said, their star quarterback, who unfortunately was injured the week before. So you had Zach Abbey, who ran for 2 touchdowns. You have to understand these two teams, their scheme is the triple option. That's what they predicate most of their offense on, is the triple option. Mostly running, a few sprinkled plays of passing here and there. But it's predicated on just running the ball and making some plays here and there. And this guy, Abbey, I got to give him credit, to come in his first career college start, be able to get 2 rushing touchdowns to help this team come back from a 14-point deficit. They were even out in first downs. They only had 1 first down in the first half, Navy, compared to Army's 14. That's also a testament right there to Navy and their, and not letting things, not just saying die and never giving up. They really tried their best. But Army, at the end of the day, got their first win in Baltimore actually since 1944.
Yeah, World War II. And in addition to the fact that they finally broke the streak, Army actually is going to finish the season with a winning record, because they're 7-5 now,
and they're
going into the bowl game.
I'm so happy. Not just them, but all 3 service academies, Army, Navy, Air Force, are going to be bowling this year.
We're going to see if we can get you the exact location and names of the bowl games that they're going to be in. That's if you already don't have it, Eric.
Oh, I have it written down. Believe me, folks. I have always, it's just, I have everything, of course.
Here we are.
The Army, it's going to be...
Well, first off, Army's going to be in Dallas playing the University of North Texas. That's in the Heart of Dallas Bowl. As for the Air Force, let me see if we can find where Air Force is going to be.
Oh, yeah, no.
It's just give us a moment. We're going to see if we can still find. Well, we already know where Army. Well, here we are. The Air Force is going to be in the Arizona Bowl. That's going to be December 30th, and it's against the University of South Alabama. And Army, for the record, is going to be playing in the Heart of Dallas Bowl on December 27th.
And the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl for Navy against Louisiana Tech on December 23rd. Yeah.
A couple of days before Christmas.
Which is really, I'm just really happy for all 3. And, of course, my Florida Gators are playing the Iowa Hawkeyes in the Outback Bowl on January 2nd. Unfortunately, I have to be at work that day when it takes place.
Yep. Most importantly are the college football playoff semifinals. Ohio State versus Clemson, Alabama, I should say, versus Washington. And they're practically championing Alabama as we speak. They're not giving Washington much of a chance. But let me tell you.
Or Clemson, for that matter.
Or Clemson, for that matter. But let me tell you, Washington can score points in bunches. So you do not want to have to be caught in a track meet with these guys. They're quick-paced offensively. They throw the ball a lot with reckless abandon.
Jake Browning, their quarterback, is really something to look out for. He's a future NFL player in the making, and they have good receivers. But I'll be honest, Alabama they have offense. They have defense. They have a mix of everything. They know how to beat you in every which direction. I'm happy for Washington to be bowling this year, but to be in this bowl game. But I don't think they will beat Alabama. I think Alabama will go right to the title game in Raymond James Stadium. The other game, that's going to be really good. Whoever wins that game is going to give Alabama the challenge of their lifetime.
Ohio State versus Clemson. It's a really interesting matchup between a junior quarterback, Deshaun Watson, and a sophomore quarterback, J.T. Barrett, who's got a lot of weapons to work with offensively. Defensively is where they really make their mark. They're just powerful on the line and at linebacker. And the job that Urban Meyer has done with that program since he took over 4 years ago, it's as if he's a miracle worker. I remember when Ohio State was first looking for a head coach, it was to the point where the program was almost in trouble. They were barely 500, and they had just come off the Jim Tressel era. And ever since they brought in Urban Meyer, it's like he's waving a magic wand. I think he's lost only 3 games ever since he took over 4 years ago.
He brought some of the luster back to Ohio State. But you know what? You also got to say for Jim Harbaugh, what he did at Michigan in these past 2 years, what he's done for the program, too, as well. But, going to this game, Deshaun Watson, who yet again lost out on the Heisman Trophy to Lamar Jackson, the youngest player to ever win the Heisman Trophy. Congratulations to him. What a great season he had. But getting to Deshaun Watson, who broke the ACC single-season record for passing yards, had over 50 touchdowns on the season. But at the end of the day, I think he's going to be he's going to be nightmarish to deal with for that Ohio State defense. I think it's going to be this repeat title game from last year, Clemson, Alabama. It's going to be the same 2 teams we're going to see coming January 9th January 9th.
By the way, I failed to mention, Rob Asamaning is on the other side of the glass. Did I pronounce your last name correctly, Rob? And once again, we are taking phone calls at 718-727-0143. You mentioned Lamar Jackson. What about the season that this sophomore had for Louisville?
Oh, he had a great one. Over 3,000 yards, 1,500 rushing. Nobody's done that since Jordan Lynch, 2012, out of Northern Illinois, who was a Heisman finalist that year. Didn't win the trophy, in fact, that season, but still a great season. And his story really, like every other story, he really, this is a guy who lost both his grandmother and his father on the same day.
Yeah.
This is a guy who had to go through the pitfalls and up and downs of life, but his mother kept him centered and grounded, and he just kept focusing on what he wanted, and he fought hard for everything that he's had in his life, and it's just amazing to see this guy, win the trophy. Really, I was happy for him. I was don't get me wrong. I'm happy for him. I of course was more partial to Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
But you know what? At the end of the day, I could have split that trophy in half and given it to both of them. They honestly deserved it over the other candidates, hands down.
It's really amazing how far this young man has made his way since he graduated from high school in South Florida. And what's scary, Alexander is just a sophomore. He's got a long way to go before he can make his mark at the next level.
Well, I know, definitely.
That's if at all, because let's face facts. As great as this season has had, I think he still has room to grow.
Well, they do have one more bowl game to play this year. It's actually in the beginning of January, if I'm not mistaken, or actually against LSU in the Buffalo Wild Wings Citrus Bowl. It's an 11 a.m. game on New Year's Eve.
Which is not a bad bowl game to be in, since it is a New Year's Day game.
And you got Leonard Fournette in that game, a guy who some people are projecting might go to the Jets with the 5th overall pick. They could use a running back if he can be the caliber that he was years ago. But we'll get into the Jets in a little bit. But I'll tell you, in terms of this college bowl season coming up, we got this Saturday right now, Gildan New Mexico Bowl. That's going to start us off. You got the New Mexico Lobos in their home territory against the Texas San Antonio Roadrunners.
Who, by the way, are playing in their very first college bowl game. And this is considering the fact that they started the football program only in 2011. And look how far this program has come. They finished the season 500. And Larry Coker, who used to coach at the University of Miami, he was the guy that started the program from the ground up in San Antonio. They play their home games at the Alamo Bowl. They only draw about 25 to 30,000 fans per home game, but the fan base that does show up, they're very, very passionate, and they're going to be really proud to see this team playing in their very first bowl game.
I think they actually will win this game. I honestly believe they're going to take – and then you got the Las Vegas Bowl at 3:30 that day. You got Houston versus San Diego State. Houston, of course, now their head coach – rumored, I think he's leaving to go to Texas.
Yeah, he already took the job, and I think he's already made his way to Austin by now. So they're going to have their interim head coach take over for the Las Vegas Bowl against San Diego State. And Houston is a team that really fell by the wayside. Ever since they got those big wins against Oklahoma and the Navy, they've really taken a nosedive. They've lost two. They've gotten blown out twice. They've gotten blown up by Louisville and by Temple.
But you got to like Greg Ward in this team. You know, he's probably the centerpiece of their entire offense is Greg Ward Jr., who can run and throw the ball as well. I think Houston will bounce back in this game despite everything and win it. Then you got the Raycom Media Camellia Bowl, the Appalachian State Mountaineers of the Sun Belt Conference against the Toledo Rockets of the Mid-American. Toledo, a team that was in the Mid-American title game against Western Michigan, you know, nearly won that game. Lost by only 6 points. I think they actually will take this. They got a heck of a running back and a good receiver on that team, so I'm going with them. Then they have the Auto Nation Cure Bowl. This is the second year they're doing this bowl game, which is for charitable purposes.
Yep.
You got
and the Cure Bowl is going to be held in,
Camping World Stadium in Orlando.
Yep, in Orlando. And this is going to be a home game pretty much for the University of Central Florida because they're hosting Arkansas State, which tied Appalachian State for the Sun Belt Conference Championship.
I think they had the tiebreaker over them or something like that. But, yeah, the Red Wolves, I think that, they'll beat the Knights, even though this is the first year for their new – let's not forget, last year the Knights had this many wins. They even had a bar that basically advertised, we'll give free shots to people – for every time that they lose.
Yep.
They were giving away a lot of free shots. Now this team actually had the necessary wins from the American Conference win. And the last game to end the day, the Southern Mississippi Golden Eagles, Louisiana Lafayette Raging Cajuns, and the R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl. Pretty much a home game.
A home away from a home game for the Raging Cajuns, since Lafayette is not too far from New Orleans, so you can believe that they're going to draw at least 30 to 40,000 fans at the Superdome.
Then you got the Miami Beach Bowl coming up on that Monday, the Central Michigan Chippewas, Tulsa Golden Hurricane. Then the 20th, the Boca Raton Bowl, Memphis and Western Kentucky.
Yep, Western Kentucky basically just got here to the Football Bowl subdivision, and they're already playing in a bowl game. This is a school that won a national championship at the football championship subdivision level a few years ago. They didn't even have football for a time, and they almost quit the football program a second time before they finally were able to build up a necessary contender to compete for a championship. And now they're going to be playing in South Florida against Memphis, a team that is no slouch, if you ask me. This is a team that traditionally has built their program through passing and running the ball.
And it's going to be played at FAU's home stadium. By the way, today, big news coming out of FAU, Lane Kiffin just accepted the head coaching job there. So now he's leaving
So he's leaving Alabama to take a job at Florida Atlantic.
Yep.
Really, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because Lane Kiffin was really looking for that one big shot. Everybody thought he was going to get the Texas job before the guy from the University of Houston took over. They still don't know why this guy has not gotten a second or third chance as a head coach. I think I might know why, because for one, He's not necessarily great with X's and O's as a head coach. He's a good offensive coordinator, but he's really failed miserably as a head coach at Tennessee and specifically at USC as well. Let's see what he can do at the grassroots level in Boca Raton.
I think the Tennessee job is what really hurt him the most.
Yeah.
I think what was good for him, he went to Alabama under the tutelage of a great coach and mentor like Nick Saban, who really nurtured him and really showed, I think brought him back to reminded him what he does best.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because of what he's done for Alabama these past years, including last year, then winning the national title, what he did with Derrick Henry and some of the other players like Amari Cooper. Now, teams like, especially for Atlantic, they want to go to that next level.
Yeah.
And they think the Owls can get back to contention in the in Conference USA with him. And I think they're gonna recruit well because of this. Then
They should have no problem recruiting in the state of Florida because that's a breeding ground for football players. If they don't go to Miami or to Florida State or to the University of Florida or even South Florida or Central Florida for that matter, these kids always find their way at a big-time university somewhere. Does the name Antonio Brown sound familiar?
Of course, wide receiver.
Who's now with the Steelers. Antonio Brown is a Florida-bred kid who made his way to Central Michigan and built his career at Central Michigan to the point where he became a high draft pick by the Steelers. He's now an All-Pro.
Geno Smith.
Smith is another one who grew up in South Florida, Miami to be exact. He went to West Virginia.
And I believe either Gio Bernard or Jeremy Hill, one of them was also from Florida too.
Pierre Garçon as well.
Of course.
Grew up in Miami.
Yep.
And he had to pay some dues to get to where he had to go. He spent 3 years at Mount Union College, which is a Division III power in the state of Ohio, and now he's become a really well-played young man for the Redskins.
I'm not sure if he's Florida bound, but T.Y. Hilton, of course, played college in Florida. I believe it was FIU. And look where he is. There's a guy who's a 1,000-yard receiver in 3 out of 5 seasons with the Indianapolis Colts. The Poinsettia Bowl, you got the BYU Cougars, Wyoming Cowboys, the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, the Idaho Vandals in their first ever bowl game, but in a few years will be back to the other level against the Colorado State Rams.
And this game is going to be played on that blue turf in Boise, where Boise State University plays their home games. Albertson Stadium is the name of
It's my favorite stadium.
Of the field where they're going to be playing in.
I don't know why I like that field besides the fact that it's blue, which is the most unusual thing I've ever seen on any football field. And
consider this, Idaho, which got kicked out of the Sun Belt Conference because they were not being competitive enough. This year, they won 8 games. And after next year, they're going to return full-time to the Big Sky Conference for every sport, including football.
So they're going to FCS.
Yep. They're gonna go back to FCS and give them credit for realizing what their limitations were, because it was painfully obvious that they could not compete in the big time. But now they're in the Big Sky for every sport except football. The football program is going to stay in the Sun Belt until the summer of 2018. But they're going to be back in the Big Sky full time that summer.
You got the Popeyes Bahamas Bowl on the 23rd, Eastern Michigan Old Dominion. Then
a game that's going to be played in front of maybe 200 or 300 fans.
Yeah, Louisiana Tech, Navy, and the Armed Forces Bowl. And the Dollar General Bowl, Ohio, Troy. Then Christmas Eve, the Hawaii Bowl. So this is a nice vacation. The Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, home field advantage right there at Aloha Stadium.
Big time.
Against Middle Tennessee.
And the only reason why Hawaii, which, by the way, is 2 games under 500, is even in a bowl game, is because they had the best academic progress rating, which is something that the NCAA is doing. If there's a school that is under 500, for example, 5 and 7, if there are no other schools that are under 500, well, if there are any schools that are 500, if they don't meet their academics, they won't be considered for a bowl game. Whereas with Hawaii, which it has very strict academics, don't let anybody fool you. The University of Hawaii is more than just going to the beach and looking at girls. They take their academics very seriously over there. That's the only reason why the Rainbows are going to be hosting their own bowl game.
Then the day after Christmas, you have the Red Hawks of Miami, which, of course, Ben Roethlisberger's old school, against the Mississippi State Bulldogs, another team like Hawaii that made it because of their APR. And then the Quick Lane Bowl, the Maryland Terrapins against Boston College, the Camping World Independence Bowl, NC State versus Vanderbilt.
Yep.
I actually really like that matchup.
Yeah, this is a really good matchup right there. An NC State program that traditionally has thrown the ball more than they've run the ball against a Vanderbilt squad that has really struggled traditionally with their football program, but that's because they get a lot of their football players with the best academic standing. And this is a team that really has grown by leaps and bounds this season.
Army, of course, in the 27, getting off that day in style in the heart of Dallas Bowl against North Texas. The Military Bowl, Temple versus Wake Forest, and that's going to actually be in Annapolis, where Temple defeated Navy 24-3 to win the American title. So it's
back to the scene of the crime for the Owls.
And then you got the Golden Gophers against the Cougars of Washington State in the National Funding Holiday Bowl, the Motel 6 Cactus Bowl, Boise State and Baylor, and that's going to be at Chase Field in Arizona.
Where the Diamondbacks play.
And then how about Yankee Stadium on the 28th? You got the Pittsburgh Panthers against the Northwestern Wildcats.
It's a shame that they have to play this game at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because if people want to see this game but they can't because they're working, they're going to miss out on something really special.
West Virginia against Miami in the Russell Athletic Bowl, the Foster Farms, Indiana, Utah, the Advocare V100, Texas A&M, Kansas State.
That's practically a home game, a home away from home game for the Aggies.
Then on the 29th, you got South Florida, South Carolina, the Birmingham Bowl, the Belk Bowl, that's Arkansas, Virginia Tech, the Valero Alamo Bowl, Oklahoma State, Colorado. On the 30th, you got the AutoZone Bowl, Georgia versus TCU.
Yeah, that's the Liberty Bowl, which is sponsored by AutoZone.
And the Hyundai Sun Bowl, the Stanford Cardinal and the North Carolina Tar Heels. The American Mortgage Music City Bowl with a mouthful, Nebraska versus Tennessee.
There's also Michigan and Florida State in the Orange Bowl. This game, maybe 20 years ago, would have been for the national title, but now they're going to be meeting in the Orange Bowl on December 30th. In years past, it was held either on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, but this time they've pushed it back a couple of days.
What I like about this game,
still a great matchup, though.
I want DeAndre Francois and that Florida State offense line trying to contain Jabril Peppers, one of the Heisman Trophy finalists from this year. Then you have the 31st New Year's Eve. We mentioned LSU, Louisville. Then you got Georgia Tech, Kentucky in the Tax Layer Bowl. The Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. We mentioned the two semifinal games of the college football playoffs. Then Monday, January 2nd, we mentioned the Outback Bowl earlier. How about the Cotton Bowl? You got Western Michigan and Wisconsin.
How about Western Michigan, one of two undefeated teams along with Alabama that are going to be playing in a major bowl game? And the head coach that they have has done such an outstanding job since he took over that program 4 years ago. He went from a one-victory season to undefeated. You know he's going to be a hot commodity down the road, but I think he's going to want to maybe get his feet a little bit more wet before he decides to go to the next level.
Zach Terrell is really the reason why Western Michigan has done as well as they've done this year. He's really been the nucleus of that offensive unit right there, and that's why they've been scoring in bunches. One of the best scoring teams in the country. I would like to see how the Wisconsin defense can contain the likes of him. That's really going to be the match right there. USC, Penn State in the annual Rose Bowl, which, I like the fact that they're returning the game this year to the Big Ten versus Pac-12.
Yeah, and that's how it should be, to be quite honest with you. This is going to be a really interesting matchup. A USC team that's quietly had a very good season. They had a big win against Washington. They got another big win against Utah. They've done very well in conference.
They've won 6 straight games, in fact, to get to where they are and, to win the Pac-12 championship. And now they're playing a Penn State team that defeated Ohio State, that really has an argument for why they should be in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
But because of the fact that they lost,
They lost badly to Michigan. I think that was the one loss that might have really, really cost them. It was how badly they lost to Michigan.
But at the end of the day, this Penn State team, considering what they went through years ago with the whole Sandusky scandal, and the scholarships that they lost and the reputation that was lost to as well. Now this team, along with James Franklin, came over from Vanderbilt, rebuilt this program, and you got Saquon Bradley and all these other players who have really brought this team back to national prominence. Happy Valley is happy once again. And then the Sugar Bowl. You got the Auburn Tigers against Oklahoma Sooners. What I love about Oklahoma, two people, Baker Mayfield, Dede Westbrook. You got to love that combination right there.
Yeah, that's a deadly quarterback-receiver duo for any school to have. Baker Mayfield, he already has announced that he's coming back for his senior year, which is good news for every Sooner that's walking around the state of Oklahoma. Could it be that maybe they can challenge for a national title within the next year?
I think they will. And not only that, he's going to challenge. He right now is the number one contender to win the Heisman. It's going to be him versus Lamar Jackson. But I think Baker Mayfield will win next year for certain.
Yep.
And Dede Westbrook, this is a guy who averages 19 yards a game. 19 yards a catch. That's unbelievable in and of itself. Number one in the country right there. And then on January 9th, the national title game takes place.
Yep. It's going to be either Michigan. Well, correction. It's going to be either Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, or Washington.
I said it earlier, Alabama, Clemson.
Yeah. I would see it pretty much go that way, too, although it would not surprise me if it went the other way. Now, let's go from the college circuit to the pros, specifically how, just last night, the Giants saved their season for the time being with probably their biggest win of the season. And how about the way they actually worked in order to get that win? All week, they were getting roasted by the fans and the media for their poor performance in the Steeler game the week before. Everyone counted them out. Cowboy fans were mocking them. And what happens? Just last night, in what was a supreme defensive performance by both squads, the Giants were maybe 2 notches better than the Cowboys. One,
well, because they went to the no-huddle in the second half. The second thing, too, they only had 84 net yards in the first half. They had a really horrible first half. That's for sure. And the fact that when they switched to no huddle and Robbie Gould got it all started with their first score of the game on that 39-yard field goal, and you have to also take into account that missed field goal opportunity by the Cowboys too.
Yeah, a missed field goal that wound up bouncing off the crossbar right at the end of the first half. Not sure if that really made a difference, but let me tell you, the way the Giants were able to not only put a rush on Dak Prescott, who had a little bit of case of happy feet in a couple of instances, but also the numbers didn't really show it, but they really did a good job of containing Ezekiel Elliott when they were supposed to. He still got his 100-yard game, but he was not as effective as he was in the previous 11 victories that the Cowboys had. Plus, even though Jason Pierre-Paul was missing for this game, and he's going to be missing for the rest of the regular season because of his groin surgery, what about the job that youngster, Romeo,
Arcala, or I'm sorry if I'm not getting his name right. But you know what? I think also the defense did a great job in containing Dez Bryant, not giving up a single reception to him, and the only reception he had with about 2:13 left in the game, led to a fumble recovery.
Yep. It just goes to show you that when teams have their backs against the wall and they get counted out, they can rise to the occasion.
And the 61-yard touchdown by Odell Beckham, that got them the lead in the game. And eventually, that was the game-winning score. They win 10-7. It was a very low-scoring affair, but it was a really great defensive effort on everybody's part, from Janoris Jenkins to Landon Collins. Everyone in that front seven, they all did their part, and that's why the Giants won last night.
And for the record, Romeo Okwara is the name of the young defensive end. He, by the way, is 6'5" and 265. That was the guy who wound up getting one of the, I think it was 2 sacks or 3 sacks that the Giant line had against Prescott.
They got a tough game coming up, though, this week against Detroit. That's for sure. A team that, if you look at the way that Matthew Stafford played, 8 out of the 9 victories they've had, fourth quarter comebacks. This is Mr. Fourth Quarter this year.
Do I smell letdown in this game.
It could potentially be a letdown, but what happened yesterday was he had an apparent injury in his middle finger. Mm-hmm. Well, let's see how much an effect that will be in terms of what he throws to, say, Golden Tate. That's where Landon Collins or either Janoris Jenkins have to do a good job trying to contain him. Mm-hmm. Or the father timeless Anquan Bolden.
As great a victory as this was for the Giants last night, there's still some really disturbing things that I saw. The offensive line is a problem. And Chris Collinsworth, who was working the game for NBC last night, he really made an important point saying that the Giants' fundamentals in learning how to block their guys is just really bad.
The pass protection.
The pass protection was equally bad.
How about those 3 sacks in the first half, 2 of which resulted in fumble recoveries, and those interceptions that Eli threw last night? That is what kills me right there, and you better not do that against a Detroit defense that knows how to take advantage of opportunity, especially when you got a guy like Darius Slay who's just aching for an interception.
Yeah. Eric Flowers, for one, he's their left tackle, and he's played every game at left tackle, basically for his entire football career. This guy has a lot of work to do on his technique because what I noticed is every offensive lineman is taught, keep your hands up like this if you're going to go up against a down lineman or a linebacker. Eric Flowers had his hands all the way by his lap instead of keeping it up by close to his chest. Not only was he burned for 2 sacks, he got burned for at least 1 holding penalty.
It's so things like that, and the inability for the Giants to score in the first half of the second straight game. They need to get that in check as well. They need to correct a lot of things, get the running game established early and often, try to keep Stafford off the field as long as humanly possible. And again, Eli, do not throw interceptions, especially against that secondary of the Lions right there with Darius Slay and Glover Quinn and all these other DBs that will make you pay for it in the end. There was another interception that nearly took place in the game.
Yeah.
Last night when he spun around, it was this close from happening in the fourth quarter. Thank God it didn't take place. Otherwise, this could have been a really bad night for the Giants. But you got to give it up to Janoris Jenkins and the defensive plays he had. And how about, a good friend of mine, Sean Dennis, and he pointed this out, and he noticed this last night too. How about those 5 punts that Brad Wing forced inside the Dallas 20.
Yep.
In their own 20.
Special teams is such a small but important part of a football game. You really cannot stress this enough. Notice the missed field goal at the end of the first half that the Cowboys had. Not only that, but what about the decision to make Odell Beckham Jr., who, by the way, scored the Giants' only touchdown last night, their full-time kick returner. He's added a really dangerous dimension to that kick return game.
Well, he's fast, he's elusive, he can blow the top off of anything. He's got everything and then some. I was happy for him, but how about finally yesterday?
The Jets actually won a game! 5-game losing streak is over. 5-game losing streak? Well, it was a 4-game losing streak, and it was the way that they were able to win this game. Down 17-0. Still, they come from behind, get a couple of field goals, a touchdown with a 2-point conversion, another touchdown, and then Bilal Powell wins it with the game-winning touchdown in overtime.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, he had a 145-yard performance on day. The only terrible thing, though, was the Giants' defense gave up 193 yards to Carlos Hyde.
You mean the Jets' defense?
Yeah, the Jets' defense gave up 193 yards to Carlos Hyde, 145 which were in the first half.
Yep.
And they had a 17-3 lead. And here's the bad thing. Phil Dawson missed 2 important field goals in that first half that could have really given...
That would have given the victory to the 49ers.
They would have had a 23-3 lead at that point had he not missed those field goals. So that right there hurt them. Also... giving up 145 yards to Bilal Powell on the 49ers defense right there. They just forgot to play defense in the second half.
Yeah.
On top of which, the fact that they squandered a 14-point lead, Powell was just unbelievable. And what killed me was Bryce Petty. The beginning of the game, his first pass of the game, he throws an interception that leads to a touchdown.
Well, this just goes to show you 2 things. One, he's got a lot of learning to do of NFL defenses. And 2, he needs to be not afraid of staying in the pocket. Now, whether it results in a turnover or not, we would like to see him be a little bit more cognizant of what's downfield. Do not zoom your eyes in on the same receiver, because defensive backs are going to look at that. I mean, look at what happened when Eli Manning threw his second interception of the game. That turned into a pick because he zeroed his eyes in on Roger Lewis Jr.
And speaking of, how about bad interceptions day? How about Russell Wilson in the late afternoon game of the week between the Packers and Seahawks? He threw not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 career-high interceptions at Lambeau Field, and they ended up losing 38-10.
Don't count Green Bay out, I'm telling you. The Packers are dangerous.
They had a 4-game losing streak before the Philadelphia game on Monday night. They have now won 3 straight in a row. They're only 2 games behind Detroit for first in the NFC North. They really are coming at the right time. Devontae Adams had a big touchdown play, and that was also due to the fact that the cornerback, again, slipped on the turf. Mm-hmm. When you play at Lambeau in December, that field is not going to be exactly stable to play on.
Just to give you an idea what the Jets and Giants are facing for the rest of the season, the Jets are basically playing out the string. They're playing strictly division opponents. They've got the Dolphins, the Patriots, and the Bills coming up. The Giants have a very, very difficult 3 weeks left. Detroit at home, and then they finish the season on the road, Philadelphia and Washington.
2 teams.
And Philadelphia, I think, got eliminated from the playoff race yesterday. So
no,
they're still in it?
They're still mathematically in it. Technically, but right now they haven't been eliminated, and that was due to that game yesterday right there between Philadelphia and Washington, that 27-22 victory for the Redskins. That was a crazy defensive game on both quarterbacks right there.
Yeah.
On both teams right there.
Yeah. Still, the Giants are going to be going up against 2 teams that have playoff aspirations. I'm counting the Eagles out because, quite frankly, I doubt that the Eagles can do anything as a 500 team. But the Redskins, who already have a victory against them, and the Lions, who have surprised everyone leading the NFC North, are going to be tall tasks. Now, as far as the rest of the league,
the Saints beat the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers beat the Saints 16-11.
The Saints are another team that have playoff aspirations. Correction, the Buccaneers are a team that have real playoff aspirations. How can the Saints honestly compete with the defense that they have? I mean, granted, they didn't do terribly yesterday, but
Breeze didn't have a single touchdown for the 2nd straight week. And this is a guy who still leads the NFL in touchdowns. And 2nd straight week, he's been held without a touchdown pass. And this Buccaneers team is coming on at the right time. This defense is really on its game. And Doug Martin had a good 1-yard run. They won 16-11. They play Sunday night in Dallas. This is the 3rd straight primetime game that the Cowboys have to play.
Yep.
Then you got the Falcons, who kicked the ever-living snot out of the Rams, 42-14. Guess what happened to Jeff Fisher today?
He wound up getting fired. And as it turns out, Jim Fossil's son, John, took over as the interim coach. To be honest with you, it was not a matter of if he was going to get fired. It was a matter of when. It just so happened that today was the day.
And the fact that the Falcons defense forced 5 turnovers, and on young Jared Goff, now 0-4 as a starter in his young career, while Matt Ryan and company, without Julio Jones, they were still able to manage that victory. The Vikings came away with a big win with Matt Asiata's short touchdown run, Kai Forbat's 4 field goals. They end up winning 25-16. Good victory. They needed that in the worst way.
Yeah, a really good win for them. But their road to a possible playoff berth gets tough as well the last 3 weeks.
The Steelers, of course, Le'Veon Bell was told for him 3 times on the ground yesterday. That's the most he's had in one game with rushing touchdowns. They won 27-20, and he had at least 298 of the 460 total offensive yards.
And there are now whispers that Rex Ryan could be getting his walking papers because he had to address that to the media after the game.
And he's still, right now, at the moment, is the coach, and Taylor's still their quarterback, but who knows for long. The Titans pulled off a surprising upset win over the Broncos, 13-10.
And all because of a huge turnover that the Broncos committed in the last 2 minutes of the game, which led to the game-winning field goal. Tennessee has really surprised a lot of people this season, and they're doing it in many different ways. They're doing it by scoring points, and they're doing it with really good defense on occasion.
And DeMarco Murray, who's having his best season since the 2014 season when he was with the Dallas Cowboys.
And the Titans are tied for the AFC South lead with the Texans.
Which is really unbelievable, because usually when you think of Titans in December, it's like, oh, here we go, the last month of their season. Let's see how worse it could possibly get.
It also shows you how poor the division is when you have two teams that are just one game over 500, tying for the lead.
The Redskins-Eagles, we mentioned Chris Thompson's 25-yard touchdown run with a minute 54 for the Redskins. They win 27-22. This was a big divisional game they needed to win. Now they're still keeping pace, but I don't think for the division, but for that sixth and final NFC spot. As for the Miami Dolphins, they kept their playoff hopes alive, but unfortunately Ryan Tannehill had an MCL and ACL sprain, not a tear. So he won't require surgery, but he could be out for some weeks. It's going to be Matt Moore who's going to be at the helm. They were up 24-9 before Tannehill's injury. They were this close from losing. They won on a Frank's 21-yard field goal.
I think this could be the time for the Dolphins to keep their game on the ground for the last 3 weeks. They've been riding Jay Ajayi on and off all season. Let's see if they can keep it on the ground, because even though it's not much of an upgrade, how worse can Matt Moore do than Ryan Tannehill, who has been a complete disappointment in 4 years?
Well, you know what? But I've seen Tannehill grow by leaps and bounds this year. Adam Gase, when he came in, this is a guy who's great with quarterbacks. We've seen what he's done in the past with the likes of Phillip Rivers, even with Jay Cutler last year in Chicago. This is a guy who was a quarterback's coach, and the Dolphins organization made a right choice hiring him. And right now, they have a chance to end their 8-year playoff drought. They got a big game coming up at MetLife Saturday night against the Jets, which is now $15 for the lowest ticket on StubHub.
Yeah.
Chargers, of course, losing to the Carolina Panthers. Not only did they lose badly, especially with Carolina forcing 5 turnovers from their defense, but Chargers lost Melvin Gordon, what could be for the foreseeable season, and Joey Bosa, too.
Yeah, it's only gone from promising to pretty much an afterthought for the Chargers. Everybody thought that they were going to be able to make this one big run, but now that both of those guys are going to be out for a time, it's only going to make things harder for Phillip Rivers.
Rivers had 3 picks yesterday and 2 fumbles on sacks, so that also is an indictment on his offensive line protecting him. And then the Browns, of course, are still losers. They're 0-13 now, losing 23-10. RG3 had his first start since week 1 when he had that shoulder injury. Did not do any favors. The only scoring he had was a 1-yard sneak in the third quarter. But other than that, this is their 16th straight loss since last December.
And their 13th loss in as many games this season. Did you see what happened after the game, though, in the locker room? Pac-Man Jones going on his garbage rant, basically ripping Terrell Pryor to pieces.
Which, honestly, Adam, this is why you never should open your mouth at all. You're the last person to make any character judgments or call anybody garbage when you've done some pretty garbage things in your past. So those who live in glass houses should not throw stones.
Thank you.
And as for Terrell Pryor, he is not garbage. Actually, he's one of the few bright spots in that offense besides Isaiah Crowell. Now, going to the Bears-Lions game, Matthew Stafford, like I mentioned earlier, 8th time this season, 4th quarter game-winning drive with his own 7-yard touchdown run. First time he had a touchdown run on the year with that 3:17 left.
Yep.
Even though he threw 2 interceptions in the 4th quarter, that's the crazy part, and he still was able to get them a victory over the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
Matt Barkley, though, he had a chance to get a tying field goal in the final minute. What happened? Penalties. Stupid penalties and turnovers on 4th down. They lost 20-17.
And in the remaining game, Texas and Colts, it took a Lamar Miller touchdown and 5 field goals to lead the Texans past the Colts, who have really disappointed a lot of people this season. I mean, granted, Andrew Luck has been in and out of the lineup because he's been hurt and due to concussion protocol, but you would think that with him in there the majority of the time that they would be able to turn this thing around, but they haven't. Now, speaking of the Texans, maybe they can keep their hopes of not only making the playoffs, but hosting their own Super Bowl alive. This in spite of the fact that they didn't really get that much from Brock Osweiler.
They ended a 3-game losing streak, and at the right time right now. So they swept the Colts, but they have not swept the Titans yet. They play each other week 17. If things go accordingly and both these teams win their next 2 weeks, I'm thinking NBC is going to make the Colts, the Texans-Titans match, the final Sunday night game of the year. And because this is the time of year where games do get games are flexed, especially Sunday night football games.
Let's see exactly what happens these last 3 weeks of the season. Now let's move on to some of the other stuff that's happening in sports, specifically what happened at the baseball winter meetings last week. It turns out that a familiar face is going to be coming back to Yankee Stadium because Aroldis Chapman wound up re-signing with the Yanks, and he got a 5-year deal out of it.
Well, it's a good thing that the Yankees made a very smart decision on their part. I'm happy that not only did the Yankees make a smart move, but how about the Mets with Yoenis Cespedes coming back on a 4-year deal too? I'm very happy for both these clubs. They're getting their promising players.
Tell you what, the Yankees are right up there with the Chicago White Sox and the Boston Red Sox as the teams that really hit a home run in the winter meetings. Because not only did the White Sox trade Chris Sale to the Red Sox and Adam Eaton to the Nationals, they got some really, really hot prospects for down the road. One of which, Yoan Moncada, is a catching prospect who is considered to be probably the next great slugging catcher in Major League Baseball.
Wow.
And the Yankees, not only did they re-sign Aroldis Chapman, they were able to get one of the best hitters in baseball, Matt Holliday, on a 1-year deal. This just goes to show you, as many lumps as he has taken, Brian Cashman can still pull a rabbit out of a hat.
He is, to me, the real deal maker. But
as far as what's going on in the other sports, in basketball, at least the Knicks are not completely embarrassing themselves. After getting their teeth kicked in by the Cavaliers on Thursday night, they were able to beat the Kings and also beat the Lakers in the first couple of games of their Western road trip. So now they're 4 games over 500, and they're playing well, but I still worry about them, and I still cannot help but criticize them because, let's face facts, Carmelo Anthony continues to be a real poison in that locker room. I mean, notice what Phil Jackson had to say about him, which caused the media firestorm last week. That's number one. Number two, the Nets are still terrible, although they exactly what can you expect out of a young team like this? They're still trying to do a little growing here. And also, Russell Westbrook is a one-man wrecking crew. He is averaging a triple-double this season, and right now, he's the most valuable player of the league the first quarter of the season. As far as hockey is concerned, the Rangers continue to just storm by the competition. Last night, they obliterated the Devils.
5-0.
5-0 at the Garden.
And on top of all that, the Islanders are slowly but surely trying to get back, as well as the Devils. But Taylor Hall's streak of score goaling just ended at 5 games. And this coming Sunday, the final pay-per-view for the WWE season in 2016, end of the line roadblock. The Universal title, Kevin Owens versus Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins versus Chris Jericho, a triple threat match for the Cruiserweight title. Yeah. I love the Cruiserweight division. Rick Swann versus TJ Perkins and the Brian Kendrick.
Yep. Speaking of WWE, our friend Lynn just texted me something that took place really, really controversially most recently. It involved Kevin Owens. There's a very disturbing video that came out on Instagram in which Kevin Owens basically berated a 7-year-old boy. Whether it was part of kayfabe or not, the mother has ripped Kevin Owens to pieces for traumatizing that poor kid.
I don't know what took place or what the content of this is or what the background story with all this. Believe me, I will find out and get to the bottom of this before I make an actual judgment on this. But the fact that he did it, whether or not it was for show or whether it was for real, still something you should never do. Never, ever do that to a 7-year-old. That's just wrong.
And to wrap up TLC, or better yet, Roadblock, or end of the line, there's that Iron Man match with Sasha Banks and Charlotte Flair for the women's title, and then there's that triple threat match that you mentioned involving the Brian Kendrick. So we're going to wrap it up right now. So I'm going to say thanks to Rob, who's on the other side of the glass. Thanks to everyone for watching at home. Thanks to you, Eric, of course.
And thank you for always having me on this show.
For everyone here, I'm Jamie.
I'm Eric.
Enjoy the show, folks. Good night.
Peace.